Dems are in disarray again. You hate to see it. A major shakeup at the DNC this morning. Two major union leaders have quit.
Randi Weingarten, leader of the American Federation of Teachers, and Lee Saunders, the president of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, have both left the committee.
Weingarten, who leads a union of 1.8 million members, said in her resignation letter, quote, "While I am proud to be a Democrat, I appear to be out of step with the leadership you are forging, and I do not want to be the one who keeps questioning why we are not enlarging our tent and actively trying to engage more and more of our communities."
Saunders, on the other hand, declined his nomination to the DNC. He told the New York Times in a statement, quote, "These are new times. They demand new strategies, new thinking, and a renewed way of fighting for the values we hold dear. We must evolve to meet the urgency of this moment." He continued, quote, "This is not a time to close ranks or turn inward. The values we stand for and the issues we fight for benefit all working people. It is our responsibility to open the gates, welcome others in, and build the future we all deserve together."
So this is happening amidst the David Hogg drama.
Right.
David Hogg, after being ousted as DNC vice chair because the election was deemed to be unfair to that lady who is running. It was not sufficiently DEI
They wanted
engaged.
a wide-ranging perspective.
And somehow that just doesn't include young men, even though that's the perspective that the DNC is struggling with right now. So he's out, and he said he's had enough abuse, doesn't want to seek that position again. I suspect that Randi Weingarten, who is not someone I especially love very much, she's the leader of the teachers union. She is more responsible than anyone else for having schools remain as closed for as long as they were during COVID, which is a policy I think was disastrous for Democrats. So I really have no love for her. However, I think she's annoyed at Ken Martin, and so are many people, of how he handled the David Hogg situation. I think he handled it very badly. There was that leaked, possibly by David Hogg, audio of him like practically crying because "you're making my life so difficult. Oh, poor me." It's sad. The Dems are just they don't know what they're doing. I don't know that David Hogg knew what he was doing either, but David Hogg is a young man, and he spoke up about how Democrats need to do more outreach, need to talk like real people to this cohort they lost to Gen Z. And it doesn't seem like under Ken Martin's leadership, the Democrats have much interest in reaching out or doing more to cater to those kinds of voters. And I think Randi Weingarten sees that and thus wants to signal her dislike of Chairman Martin.
Look, the Democrats have some soul searching to do to figure out what the DNC will look like, what the party will look like, and what the ways forward are. It seems like there's a very obvious struggle between what was and the decision on what is, between a variety of thoughts. It's like broken up into several factions of people that have their different ideas of the way forward, from the Bernie Sanders ideas to the people who want to completely abandon any of the quote-unquote woke conversations, to other people that completely just, want to even lean more moderately. I think even John Fetterman is an example of, just what exactly is going on. I think the more public fighting, the more that it looks like chaos. But I also remember, if we just look a few years back, or even recently up until the second election of President Trump, there was the same conversation inside of the Republican Party. Were we going to stick with the establishment and what was normal, or was Trump going to fight his way through, which he did for that first time that he won the election, is like come swinging through and make his stance known with the American people so much that they voted for him, to the dismay of many traditional Republicans. You know what I mean? Trump kind of pushed his way through, and to the point where there was traditional conservatives that had to get on board versus wanted to get on board. And so we need to figure out, I think, or the Democratic Party needs to figure out what they're going to do as far as like who's going to be that person to either forcefully push through, like we saw President Trump do, or are they going to come together and not make it that difficult and really just decide what the next step of the party looks like by talking to what constituents and finding out what they want. I don't think it necessarily needs to be somebody as jarring or, over the top as President Trump, but the way he did it was effective, and it worked after multiple times trying to insert his name seriously into the presidential conversation. So it's either going to be one or the other. They're going to have to, or they're just going to continue to lose elections. It has to be one or the other. They're going to have to someone's going to have to push through and go against everything in a way that we've seen a lot of the infighting happen, but somebody that actually is a viable candidate for president, or they're going to have to go the easy way, which would be have dialogue and find the new stars of the party and allow them to lead. And just try that strategy, because at this point, you lost. You got to figure out what's next.
Yeah, they need stronger leadership. I don't think Ken Martin is cut out for this. I think, as much as it's not my constituency or constituency that Republicans are super interested in, but teachers' unions and other employees' unions have been just a huge backbone of the Democratic Party. So to be alienating a very powerful figure and leader of that group of people seems just, it should be a death knell for his leadership, should it not?
And the conversation around the party was that somehow Democrats lost touch with working class Americans. And outside of young men or men in general from a variety of groups moving right, Democrats also somehow allowed President Trump, who's a billionaire, to convince people that he was more for working people than Democrats were, which is a huge misstep for Democrats. And they allowed the ball to drop to a level where maybe they were having so many high-level arguments about topics that weren't affecting Americans' wallets that they completely removed themselves from the real conversations on blue-collar Americans' dinner tables every night. And so they have to figure out how to circle back to the people that supported them, which are teachers, which are a lot of the people that are represented by these unions. So I think that is something that they should be working on right now, as opposed to figuring out how to find the next Joe Rogan and the other conversations that we've been having. To me, that's a horrible misstep and actually working the wrong way. You find that person after you have policy that aligns with things that person actually believes in.
Well, he's got to arise organically. He can't be grown in a laboratory. He can't be bought and paid for. It's none of their strategies for identifying influencers who will manifest a Democratic message. But you're right, there is no message yet. They don't know what the message is. They don't have the message or the messenger, and they don't have leadership that understands what it should be or agrees on what it should be or is interested in having some kind of internal debate or discussion about what it should be. Should it be left-wing populism? Should it be the abundance agenda? Should it be more woke or less woke? What is it?
But this blows my mind.
Who is it pertaining to?
We've had conversations for years since the first Trump presidency, and even before that, about how much of a state of shock the world will be in if Trump becomes president, and how quote-unquote fascist he is, and all these dramatic terms that the Democratic Party has used over and over again. So to not have like 30 answers on a list of how you respond to Trump blows my mind. Yeah. It blows my mind that there's not a well thought out plan, because Kamala on the entire campaign trail and the entire Democratic Party were arguing how terrible Trump would be for the country. So to not have a direct response in the event, because people lose elections all the time, from top down, state level, federal level, to not have a direct response, to me really is the most incredible, fascinating thing that I've seen reporting on this for years, I think ever, that people are sitting here trying to figure out what's next right now. Why would that ever be the conversation 6 months into a presidency that you said was going to be the worst decision of all time for the American public? So, there's a lot of soul searching that has to be done for sure.
Lots more to come today on Rising. Stay tuned.